Hello and welcome to cutting for month 2 of our $5 quilt club. First, what we're going to do in order to cut these curved pieces is we're going to cut our fabric into squares. Make sure you press your fabric. You starch if you want a little more stability. But you need to have it, make sure it's nice and flat, no wrinkles. First, what we're going to do is we're going to cut our blue fabric into squares. I'm going to cut it into a 4-inch square. So just to start off, I'm going to cut the 2 edges here to get it nice and square, just like that. And then I'm going to rotate my square, put it along the edges of my mat, right on a corner here so that I can see that it's going to be a nice square cut. And then I'm going to line it up with the 4-inch line on my ruler. Or you can also just use a straight edge and put it and cut on the 4 inches on your mat by just counting 4 inches, and then you can put another straight edge. It can be any ruler. This one has the 4-inch, so I'm just going to use that one. Now I'm just going to trim up this side here. So now I have a perfect 4-inch square. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my piece, my template, and I'm going to place it over my perfect 4-inch square. And now I'm going to cut this curve right here. So if you use like a 45 millimeter blade, it's really hard to get your perfect curve because the blade is so large. So what I have here is an 18 millimeter, and the blade is a lot smaller, so it's a lot easier to get this to curve around this edge here. One thing that you're definitely going to want to make sure you do is cut one at a time, just to make sure that you're not slipping and ruining a whole pile of blocks, because you will need 4 of them. So I'm going to cut just one at a time. One thing you're going to want to make sure is that you're cutting the fabric. This curve is going to be on the bias, and you can always tell it's the bias is if when you pull diagonally across it, it stretches like crazy. If you pull this way, it doesn't stretch at all. So I've identified which way is the bias, and that's where I want to have my curve right here, so that when I go to do the curved piecing, it's going to stretch really, really nicely. So I'm just going to line up the edges of my paper template here with the edges of my block, and then I'm going to use my 18 millimeter and then just cut really nice and easy and slowly all around the edge here. So if you don't want to do that, or you don't have, say, an 18 millimeter rotary cutter, what you can do is you can just use a pen and mark that on your fabric, and then you can just use scissors and cut along the line. So there is the one there that I have cut out, and now we need to repeat the same for our white template piece. So for this one, I'm going to cut a 3-inch square. So again, I'm going to just lay my ruler on there, and I have 2 exposed edges where I can just cut along the edges. And now I have a perfect square corner. I'm going to rotate my corner, line it up really nicely with my mat. You can use your mat to cut. Again, 1, 2, 3 this way, 1, 2, 3 this way. And you can also use your 3-inch markings on your ruler. So here we are, we have a 3-inch. And so I'm going to cut that. Now I have a really nice, perfect 3-inch square. So now I'm going to take my white template here, and now I want to cut this whole curved edge here. So since we squared up the piece before we were cutting this curve, we know that this angle is going to be a perfect 90 degrees. Before I get started, I do want to make sure that that is the bias, and so you can see that stretch right there. Pull this way, doesn't stretch. Pull this way, it stretches a little bit, but not quite as much as on the diagonal. So I know that this this direction is the bias, so I'm going to place my piece right on the corner. And again, you can mark this with a marking pen, and then you can cut it out with scissors, or you can use a small rotary blade. The 28 or the 18 millimeter would probably be just fine. I happen to have an 18 millimeter here, so I'm just going to really nice and slowly go all the way across the edge here. So So there, now I have this cut really nicely. One thing that you'll notice is that when you're doing these curved piecing, it just does not look like this is going to fit with this, but I promise you it is. And this is what we're going to do is this is the inside piece for this one. It doesn't at all look like it's going to fit, but it is totally right. And I'll show you how to fold these and mark these and pin them or glue them. There's a whole bunch of different methods to get your curved piecing to be set in like that. So we'll come back with our setting instructions.